Hey everyone, welcome to part 3 of our 1 gallon brew series. Alright, let's talk fermentation. In order to make the alcohol, the yeast need to be in an environment that allows them to reproduce and eat all the sugar and create all the CO2 and create all the alcohol. Yeasts have a temperature range that they like to work in. But most of the yeast that comes with these kits is fairly forgiving and can be pretty much done in a basement if you have one. I don't have a basement. I am on a slab right now. So I have built myself a fermenter. It's basically just a refrigerator that I've attached with one of these temperature regulator things. What happens is if it gets too hot and it hits a temperature, it'll turn on this particular outlet, which turns on the fridge to make it cool off. If it gets too cold, I could plug something in here, say a heating mat or a light bulb or something, and it'll heat it up to keep it within the temperature range that I specify with that. You can buy those online. That's a fairly significant purchase. Well, significant in that it's about 40 bucks, but you also need something for it to work with. So if you don't have a small fridge to work with it, then you need to buy that as well. But like I said, if you have a basement or you have someplace cool you can store it, where it won't get too much below, say like 60 degrees, and not too much above, say in the 60 to 70 degree range, if it stays in there, you should be good. And that's what this is. I have this one set for 65. So you can see it's just a fridge that I had, and I built a wood surround on it so it would fit everything in here, and then I can feed in the probe coming in here from the unit, the temperature control unit. I've got mead already in here. This has been fermenting for a little over a month now. So the beer will go right next to the mead. I've got a much bigger space here, so I can, in the future, go to a double batch, the 2.5 gallons or so. That's my plan eventually. But for now, as far as the beer is concerned, I gotta wait 2 weeks. See you then. It's been about a week and a half since brew day, and I'm pretty sure that fermentation is done. There hasn't been any activity in the airlock, so that means that the yeast is no longer producing carbon dioxide. There's other ways to look to make sure that the yeast is done converting everything they can to alcohol, and one of the ways is using either a hydrometer or a refractor to check the specific gravity and look for when it doesn't drop below. It stops dropping. It stays steady for a few days. That'll tell you when the yeast is done. The problem is with a hydrometer, especially when you're only doing a gallon of beer and you got to do reading after reading after reading, day after day after day, you're going to use up a lot of your beer just taking the specific gravity readings. You can use a refractor, but once you start getting alcohol in the mix of the water or the wort or the beer, it kind of messes up the reading a bit on the refractor. And I don't want to take the chance of putting something in there to pull some beer out and put on the refractor to look at it. We did that in the last video for the original gravity. I'm just going by the airlock here. I've got a weight that sits on top of this. Is just a, for like working out, 3-pound weight. What it does is it prevents the air from escaping around the edges. It forces everything through the airlock so that I can see it actually working. Like I said earlier, we are about a week and a half out from brew day. In about 2 or 3 days, I want to put this into a bottle. First of all, I'm going to cold crash this beer. What that means is that I'm going to get the beer real cold, which will help all the yeast and everything else in there to kind of sink to the bottom and hopefully give us clearer beer in the bottles. The way I do that is I keep it in the refrigerator here, and I set the temperature over on the controller over here, and this controller turns on the refrigerator when it gets too warm. We've turned this down to about 45 degrees, and that will cool this off enough for us to bottle it. And you just heard the refrigerator kick in. It's starting to cool off. This temperature controller also has a probe that I keep in this. This is just a bottle of water here with the temperature probe going in there, so that way I know, I have a good idea of what my temperature my beer is at as well. So the next time I see you will be bottling day. Welcome to bottling day. I've got everything I need right here for bottling. You see a lot of familiar faces here, like OxiClean and Star San, as well as the bottles that we cleaned, and then our red tub that we used to clean everything in. But there are some new things here. We've got this gray and orange box that I use this to keep everything in, as much of it as I can, so it could just fit nicely on a shelf. This is the auto siphon with the filler tube, which is what we will be using to transfer the beer from the fermenter here into the bottles. You might notice that there's this blue bucket underneath the fermenter. There's nothing really in there. It's all just stuff I've had from past brew stuff that I've decided I don't need. So I just keep it in this bucket. I use this bucket to put height because we're using a siphon to fill the bottles, so you need the fermenter to be higher than the bottles. You could use it, if you don't have a bucket or a box or something, you could just set it on the table and put your beer bottles on the floor, or put this on a chair and put your beer bottles on the floor, or put this on the table and your beer bottle. You know, just get this higher than your beer bottles and you'll be good. Finally, we've got caps to put on the beer bottles and a capper to crimp the beer caps onto the beer bottles. I've got a bowl using Star San and water to sanitize the bottle caps. And I've got another bowl that we will be putting some of the beer into so we can use the refractometer to get our final gravity. Since there's alcohol in there and the refractometer, using the refractometer is going to give us kind of a skewed number, but it'll be close enough for what we're doing. We're not, selling this, professionally, so this is just for our own consumption. We just need to be close enough. So let's get down to it. We got to start sanitizing all this stuff. Most of the stuff has already been cleaned. Using the OxiClean. We'll be using this a lot more when we're cleaning up at the end. But right now we need to get everything sanitized with Star San. And of course, since we're doing beer brewing, gotta have a beer. This isn't homebrew. I'm kind of running low on my homebrew right now, so this is a commercial Irish stout leftover from St. Patrick's Day. Cheers. Alright, I've already got 5 bottles in a Star San solution here. You may recognize this as the bottom of my container, the orange and gray container that I keep everything in. Everything is stored over in the lid right now until I'm done with this. It's kind of how I like to do things. I like to make things do double duty. Yeah, it contains everything, but it also gives me a place to wash and sanitize what I need. So with the bottles in here, I want to make sure I spin them every so often. Spin them a couple times. Make sure that the Star San gets all in there. It touches all the sides of the beer bottles. Now we've got the auto siphon parts. So this part just goes like that. You can stick that in there. Get that full. And then we've got a hose. You can see kind of the water spots on that hose. That's water from the tap of my house here, so that's why I use the bottled water when making the beer. But this is clean. This has already gone through OxiClean. Now I just got to sanitize it before I use it. And this setup here, the siphon setup, will stay in the Star San until I am done. And then here's the auto siphon part. It's basically a plastic tube, and it's got a little plastic doohickey on the end, so you put the plastic tube in there, spin it around. There's a couple pieces here that are part of the auto siphon You got to take everything apart. When you're done cleaning, when you clean it, after we're done siphoning all the beer into the bottles, we got to take it apart and clean it, get all the hops and everything out of there, all the residue. And then when we go to sanitize it again, we got to take it all apart as well. So we just throw that in the water. Now, dry my hands off a bit here. I've got a little bowl. I'm going to take some Star San water and put that there. I'm going to put it down over here. And we've got bottle caps. You need to sanitize the bottle caps. You don't want any bacteria or anything on the bottle caps that'll get into your beer. I'm going with white. I've got some other colors, but I decided to go with white this time. This absorbs oxygen, so as the beer is carbonating in the bottle, this will be absorbing any oxygen to prevent your beer from going skunky. So we'll put about 12 of these into the bowl of sanitized solution. The reason we go with 12 is because we probably won't be getting 12 bottles out of a gallon of beer. We'll probably be getting somewhere between 9 or 10. But we want to make sure that this way, if we drop any on the floor or anything like that, we've got extra ones ready to go. Now that the beer bottles have been sanitized, we're going to put them in here. We don't need to worry about sanitizing this because only the outside of the beer bottles are going to be touching it, and we won't worry about any beer that gets outside of the bottles. We're only worried about the beer that's in the bottles. So we can just dump this water out here. And you can kind of see the foam in there. Remember, don't fear the foam. That's fine. We're just going to line them up in here. This is an auto filler. When you push on this little bit on the front here, it'll let beer flow through. It'll let fluid flow through, in this case beer. And then you can kind of see on the bottom there, there's little half circles that where the beer comes out. So you can just push it in against the bottom of the beer bottle and the beer will flow through. And then you pull it up and it seals itself, so you can go to the next bottle, stick it in the next bottle and do the same thing. Bottle, the bottle, the bottle. That's got to go in the sanitized solution as well. When you're putting bottles into the sanitizing solution, you want to make sure that you fill it all the way up. So the best way to do it is to kind of lay it in there and let it just kind of flow in until it fills mostly up. Like that, and then you spin it to get all the sides of the bottle. Alright, now we're going to open the fermenter. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have our Star San spray, and we want to spray around the edges to make sure we're not touching anything and accidentally introducing any bacteria, because it's got to still sit in the bottles for a couple weeks before we can drink it. So we'll just spray around. You got to take the airlock out. So spray around the airlock. That'll also help lubricate it and help it come out a little easier. Alright, now we crack it open. Want to take a look inside? Let's do it. You can kind of see along the edge here, I don't want to touch it. You can see along the edge there's some krausen there. There's some krausening that's on top here. It's a nice dark color, which is good for a porter. And over on the side here, you can kind of see that we're pretty much right at the 1 gallon mark. That's just some Sharpie that I used. Use some water to figure out the graduations on this bucket. So we'll probably get maybe 9 bottles out of a gallon, maybe 10. But I got 12 there just in case. Now we put together the auto siphon. Alright, this is how the auto siphon goes together. You got the bottom of the auto siphon. It's got a little point to it. You got a little threaded union here. And that goes in. You can kind of see the separation there. There's little holes in there to allow the beer to go through. And then you've got this piece which goes in that little hole in there. And then you got this piece, and those little things that stuck up on that piece we just put in there, those little pieces that stick up, they go through those little squares on the side. So I'm not sure how well this is going to come out, but you can kind of see that there. And then we put the tube on there. Put that on reasonably tight. You don't need to really crank it on there. It'll seal up pretty well. And then we take the racking cane, and the racking cane, the seal goes right in there. It's a little easier to do when it's wet than when it's dry. But it just goes in there like that. There we go. Just like that. And one thing I forgot is the little clip that goes on the side to hold it onto the bucket. So we'll sanitize that while we get the rest of it together. And then we got the flexible hose. One end just slips right over the top there. You don't need a hose clamp or anything. Just set it right above there, like that. Don't want to get too far on there because it will get stuck. So do that. Our clip has gotten sanitized, so that just pops right on like that. You take the auto filler, and that also just slides right into the tube. You don't need any pipe clamps for that or hose clamps for that. And we'll just stick this in here for now. I'm going to bring it back over here to see how we set up the auto siphon. Okay, you see how the blue tip of the auto siphon is just above the water line? In the clip, I'm just going to start pushing it into the beer. And I hit bottom. There, I hit bottom. Now I'm going to pull it up a bit so I, oops. See if I can do this here. Pull it up a bit just so I'm getting all beer and not so much of the trube, which is the stuff that's on the bottom that we used the cold crash to settle down to the bottom. And I just realized I forgot the top part here. So I'll put that on, and then we'll start siphoning. Now, to get the auto siphon going, you want to make sure that this is sealed up on the bottom here as you pull it up, and it'll suck the beer up into the tube, and then you push this down against the bottom of the beer bottle, and you push this down, and it'll force the beer through the tube and into the bottle. You just should do it once, maybe twice, and then you'll be set to go. So make sure it's not touching. Pull up, you can see a nice column of beer there, push down. We've got a nice siphon going here. What we're going to do is we're going to fill it till the beer comes almost all the way to the top, and then when we pull the filler out, it'll drop down far enough. And that'll be the perfect amount of space between the beer and the top. And that's one bottle. Just got to finish up. All right, I filled 3 bottles. I'm getting nice clean beer. So in the center here, I've got a little blue bowl. I'm going to put some beer in so I can use it for the refractor, so I can get my final gravity. Just a little bit, don't mean much. And then I move back to filling the bottles. The beer's getting to the bottom of my siphon, so I'm going to tilt the bucket towards the siphon so I get a deeper amount of beer at that area, and I don't have to push it down into the tube. Now the reason we're using the auto siphon is because we don't want to splash our beer into the bottles. We want it to go in nice and smooth and keep as much oxygen from being mixed into the beer as possible, because oxygen will skunkify the beer. Alright, and it's 9 bottles, and that last bottle got a lot of trub in it. You can see just how cloudy that beer is at this point. That last bottle's going to have a lot in there. You can see all the trub that's down in there. That's all that's left over. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of bottle day were the Fizz Drops that came in the recipe kit. We're going to use these. They're just like I said before, they're just sugar lozenges. We're going to use these to put into the beer, and there's some yeast still in the beer, and the yeast will eat the sugar, create slightly more alcohol, not much, but it'll also add carbonation, which is what we want for our fizzy beer. Hence the name Fizz Drops. Usually they send too many. You can only get like 9 or 10 bottles out here, and I only got 9 today. But there's probably a good 15 or so in there. So you're always going to have some left over from, and that's kind of nice. I like that. And that way, if you also drop any, you don't have to worry about it, just get a new one. Very simple. This is a capper. Put the cap on there, put this on top. As it closes up, this grabs around underneath the little bump here. And then as you do that, this bell in here, this is a magnet that holds the cap on. That bell will come in, will come down, and push the edges of the cap over the edge of this first bump here. So what I do is take my Star San, spray it in there real good so we don't introduce any bacteria. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the Fizz Drops. Just take the cap, attach it to the inside of the capper, seat it on there, and it's just a matter of pushing it down like that. You can see how nice that crimps it around. That's why you can't use the screw off caps, because this capper doesn't work with the screw off. It just crimps it around that top edge. So now we bottle condition the beer. That's basically letting the yeast that's still in the beer eat up all the sugar in the lozenges and create the carbonation that'll give us a nice, hopefully, foamy head. Then it also allows the flavors to meld a little bit together as well. About 2 weeks is about how long we need to wait. Now, much like oxygen can skunk a beer, light can skunk a beer, which is why we tend to use brown bottles as opposed to clear bottles or green bottles. If you're using clear or green, you're expecting those beers to be consumed fairly quickly. If you're going to let your bottles sit around for a little while, you want to have them in brown bottles to protect them from the light. Another good thing is to have a box that is doesn't have much room for light. This is a good one, made for beer. It's only got really 2 places where light comes in. So what I'll do is I'll just set them in here. And I'll just close the box, and they're in there. I've got 8 bottles in there. And for the most part, the bottling's done. Now we just gotta get our final gravity and clean up. So we have the refractometer and the little pipette. Put a paper towel down in case we drip any. Just go in here, we're just gonna paint some onto the glass. Squirt it back in there. That's not going into a bottle, so we don't need to worry about contamination at this point. 1.062, which is, we were over 1.1 something, so we've dropped quite a bit. There's still a lot of lactose in there, so it's going to give us a high gravity because that hasn't been fermented by the yeast. So that's and since there's alcohol in here, this is not going to give us an accurate reading as well. But like I said earlier, it's close enough for what we're doing here. Now comes the fun part. It's basically just flat beer. Smelling it, I smell a little bit of banana. Definitely has a bit of an alcohol bite to it, but not much. It's not too bad. It's still very smooth. It's not bad. I like that. That's pretty good. Coats the tongue well. It's very much almost like a milk stout because it's got the lactose in it. So it's a bit creamy, even though there's obviously no carbonation in there yet. I think this would go well on a nitro tap. Maybe once I get enough money to cobble that together, I'll try it out. But otherwise, it's pretty good. So you might be wondering what I do with all of this waste in the bottom of the fermenter. It's one of the nice things about using a plastic fermenter like this and not a glass carboy, is that you can get in there and clean it nice and easily once you're done. But what do you do with the waste? Well, kind of looks like something you might be familiar with. I don't really want to say what it looks like. It's brown and kind of soupy. So I'm just going to go put it in the toilet and flush it down. Time to clean up. You kind of see all the junk here that's on the siphon. Got to clean all of this off as well. You can see because we got so much trub up in there that there's trub all in the racking cane and everything else in there, so we got to make sure we clean this all up. So nice and clean. Well, we got about 2 weeks until the bottles become drinkable. See you then. So here it is. 5 weeks after brew day, 3 weeks after bottling. This is the sweet porter beer. Got a little bit of a fizz, so that's good. You always kind of worry about what's going on in there when you can't really see it. It's been in the fridge for about 3 days now. Let's see if we get any head on it. No head. Usually with these big beers you don't get much of a head without forced carbonation. I'm going to leave some in there. There's some trub that goes in there. You know, put the sugar in there for the yeast to carbonate the beer, which didn't seem to do too good of a job. But anyway, it drops to the bottom, just kind of like in a regular fermenter. So there it is. Let's see. It's dark, you really can't see through it. No floaties, which is good. Left it all in here. It's definitely sweet. The lactose is definitely present there. I can taste it very easily, very well. But it's good. I like it. I'd say that was a success. Probably brew this one again at some point. No, maybe not. I'm thinking moving to brew in a bag and start doing from all grain. But as far as kits go, this is a good one. Oh, thanks for watching. It's been a long haul through here. This has been a very comprehensive series of videos. So hopefully you've learned a lot. You've got some tips, some ideas. If you really like this video, give me a thumbs up. You may want to think about subscribing to the channel. I got a bunch of other videos, not on beer necessarily. Me to be coming up eventually. We're going to be doing some kegging and then moving into the brew in a bag type stuff. So yeah, hope to see you again. So if you have any questions, leave them below in the comments section. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. I'm not an expert here. But I hope you enjoyed yourself. See you around at the next one. Cheers.